So we cut the frame in half, taken the bottom off. It's screwed on using torque screws, and then just the end bits here I've just put a bit of epoxy paint on because it's bare metal. So here we've got a sheet of core flute we picked up at the tip shop. We're just going to draw around the corners and then draw straight lines in between, and because the edges are floppy you can't really draw around those bits, and then the core flute should just fit in at the right height. And then, as you can see in the background, we're going to have 8 just ordinary flower pots cable tied into holes in the core flute, which will allow the water to filtrate into the flower pot, then up through some wicking medium. So that's what it looks like with the core flute jammed in. Doesn't quite fit, but pretty well, so we just have to put a strip of geofabric around the edge. And then here's the flower pots inside. You'll notice that because of the ridge in the middle, this is the top, you're going to need a slightly smaller flower pots for the central ridge. And then I'll put one in the middle, a slightly bigger flower pot. Note that of course when this goes in, the flower pots are going to be the other way up, so that the water will go through these little holes and suck upwards. So here's the flower pots, roughly in the places they're going to go, and they'll be we'll cut holes in the core flute and then just cable tie the flower pots into the core flute. So here's the way the plant pots are stuck in. Just get a circular drill like these things, circular hole. Cut a hole the size just under the size of the lid of the flower pots. A couple of holes in the side of the flower pots, and a hole inside there, and cable ties just to put them in place. And then they locate themselves, as you can see there, just underneath the sort of hang from the bottom of the core flute. Pretty simple. And you fill them up, a bit of geofabric at the bottom to stop the wicking material, sand or crusher dust going through there, and fill them up with the crusher dust, etc., and that's it really, that's the wicking. Okay, so we painted both of these. I read somewhere that they eventually degrade in the UV, so we just happened to have an old tin of UV protective paint, so we painted them white. The top has been screwed on with some aquarium safe silicone, including the little air breather at the top there, so that shouldn't leak. And you'll see on the left we've just left a strip unpainted here, just with a bit of masking tape over it, so that when the tank is full and working you can easily see the water line. Okay, you can see now what I mean. The plant pot and core flute's in for the first tank there, and you can see what I mean about being able to see the level easily enough. And in the front of it you can see the bit of core flute with the plant pot stuck on waiting to go into the other tank. So here's the outlet and the inlet going in, just by where the bit of masking tape's gone, so you can see the water level. The dashed line is where the core flute comes to. The outlet's at the bottom there, and you see I've had to cut away part of the frame to fit these two fittings in. The bottom one there has got an elbow on it with a stopper, so that if necessary I can put a bit of pipe in there to see what the level is. And the top one is just below the the level of the core flute, so it pretty well makes sure that the water's almost to the level of the core flute. It's just touching the shadow you can see there of the horizontal bar, and that's where I'm going to drill a hole. Now these holes are just about the right size to be able to screw these fittings in, which are just tank outlet fittings. Screw them in, so you're actually screwing into the plastic to make it much more snug, and they'll be also have some silastic around them to seal them. Okay, so now we want to see what the wicking is like with crusher dust versus sand. So what I've done is I've baked some crusher dust and the right tray and bake some sand for about an hour and a bit to get rid of all the moisture. And then I put them in 2 clear tubes sitting in some water there. The tubes are just made of rolled up bookbinding acetate with film with a bit of masking tape to seal it all up. Seems to work well enough. So what we're going to do is just time how long it takes the water to rise up each one of the tubes. We also did some pH tests, and both of them are in the neutral range. The crusher dust on the right is slightly alkaline in the neutral range, and the sand is slightly acid, but they're both basically neutral. Okay, because the core flute's a bit floppy, we don't want it collapsing. You can use these steel supports from the top of the tank you took off, which naturally enough are just exactly the right size to hook over the core flute and scoop it up slightly, tied on by cable ties. And then these are just bits of light aluminium struts I took out of an old garden umbrella. Again, cable tied on just to hold the thing up. On top of this, we're going to put core flute membrane and not core flute, garden wicking mat, and then it'll run up the sides. Then we'll put it in the tub and put crusher dust down in the holes. Okay, so here they are now with a bit of geofabric, the word I was trying to say, geofabric in each pot, just coming up sides of the pot and laying over the top with about a fistful of geofabric in each one just to hold it down. And this is now ready to be installed in the bed, and then there'll be geofabric laid across the top to stop it going down the sides. Okay, here's the 2 beds in place. The pipes going in on the left hand side is the water inlet, and the flower pots are now strapped to the underside of this core flute, and they're filled with wicking, the wicking metal dust, crusher dust. Now there's 2 sensors here to so that the beds are watered automatically. Down on the bottom right hand side is a small couple of floats at the bottom of that tube, and over the far side, you can't see it here, there's a couple of small Hall effect sensors which are attached to the bottom of the tube, so that they sense the level of the water, and when the water drops too low, it automatically switches the water on, and when it gets to a level which is just below the outlet, it'll turn the water off. This is the control system in the little old repurposed NBN box. You can see underneath the water inlet, these hose pipes, and there's a couple of solenoid valves on each one of those. 2 types of sensors are said. The one on the right there is a couple of floats. The one on the far bed is the one with 2 Hall effect sensors, and they should mean that the whole watering system is completely automatic, and if the bed overfills, then the outlets will allow the water to drain off. If it goes too empty and we're away, then it'll automatically fill it up. Okay, so now we've spread a layer of geofabric on top of the flower pots and the core flute, and then about an inch of 25mm of crusher dust on top of that, just to hold the whole thing down and ensure that the wicking gets up into the compost and copra, what do we call it? Gets up into the compost and cocoa peat layer. Okay, now this tank is automatically filled. Its cutoff is set to be a little bit low, but the point is here you can see how when we let the painting out, you've got a level that you can see where the water's filled up to. Now the automatic waterer ensures that the tank's not going to run dry, because it will always fill up to that level. It will keep it at that level, and the space above is left, which you can fill up with rain. Of course, you can always go and fill the thing up with a hose pipe if you want. So this is one of the wicking beds after 45 minutes. You can see that the crusher just doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is wicking the water up from the reservoir, and then the loam and cocoa peat and compost above that will have a constant supply of water. And then the other one here, this is after an hour. This bed's obviously a little bit tilted, since the first half is getting quite wet and the back half isn't, but still it's doing the right thing. Okay, now you can see it's the next morning and all the crusher dust is wet in the bottom of each bed, and so the wicking's working like it should. It's sucking water up from the reservoir and soaking the crusher dust, which provides a wet base for the soil and compost above it. And you can also see where the water level is on the tank that's full, where the 2 arrows are. I'm interested in knowing what the moisture is at two different levels in these wicking beds. So I've made up this capacitated moisture sensor, 2 units, one for each bed, and that measures the top and the bottom of the cocoa peat mix in the growing part of the bed. And this here is a long-term data recording device which I made up using Arduino. It's relatively simple to do, but only if you know Arduino programming and so on, so I won't leave any references to it. You can't buy them commercially, but you can buy these sensors, and you could probably figure out how to do it if you're technical enough. One thing I would say is these are capacitative sensors. Avoid the resistive ones. They really don't work. They're very inaccurate and very flaky.